Welcome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Samantha Becotte. I'm the president of the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation, and I am joining you here on Treaty 6 territory in the traditional lands of the Métis. I just want to again thank everyone for continuing to join us and join in on many of our announcements and continue to share the realities that students and teachers are facing in their classrooms, as well as the realities of our current bargaining process. So government and SSBA are remaining intransigent on their position that class complexity and violence in the classroom or any article around teacher working conditions, which are our students' learning conditions, cannot be included within provincial collective agreement. But last week, we heard from 3 leaders from different provincial teacher organizations across Canada who have articles aimed at addressing classroom complexity, class size, supports for students, and violence in the classroom. As well, the conciliators report that we received in January also stated that items on teachers' working conditions can be bargained collectively within the provincial contract. Teachers are ready to negotiate these items. We're ready to have a genuine back and forth conversation and get us to a point where all parties to the agreement are satisfied. But the government and the SSBA need to give the GTBC the authority to engage in those conversations and truly begin the negotiations process. Government has continually left education and kids off their list of priorities. And while the Minister of Education has started talking about a potential renewed investment in education coming in the budget, statements like these show some hope for a change of course. But this government's actions speak louder than their words. I have no doubt that without any commitment or without a commitment in the collective agreement, where government can be held accountable to this renewed investment, once contract negotiations are resolved or public pressure subsides, the Saskatchewan Party will claw back any increased funding that they provide in the upcoming budget that's going to be announced in March. This is yet another sad attempt to avoid long-term sustainable funding for education and ignore their responsibility of ensuring Saskatchewan has a high-quality, publicly funded, publicly accessible education system. As it has been said, education is the greatest equalizer, and all students, regardless of where they live in Saskatchewan, regardless of their abilities or their needs, deserve an equal opportunity to thrive in their education. And unfortunately, despite teachers' best efforts, the decisions of this government are stacking the odds against students and teachers. We need a change of course, and we can no longer accept empty promises or committees that push the problem down the road another 3 or 4 years. We have seen over 62,000 emails and phone calls now go to MLAs through our Tell Them Tuesday platform. Teachers have taken more job action this year than we have in any round of provincial collective bargaining. We had a massive rally in Regina last April, along with 4 not so many rallies in the fall, seeing over 7,000 people come out to call on government to make public education a priority. These issues are important, not just to teachers, but to students and parents and their families, and even those indirectly connected to public education. Unfortunately, they're just not important enough for our government and our elected officials. We need a change, and we can no longer wait for that change. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the past weekend, we gave notice for job actioning that is happening today, tomorrow, and Wednesday in different areas of the province. And today we're giving notice for another day of rotating withdrawal of noon hour supervision that will happen on Thursday, February 29th in Chinook School Division, in Creighton School Division, in Lloydminster Public and Lloydminster Catholic School Divisions, in Northeast School Division, and in Prairie Spirit School Division. It is the school division's responsibility to make alternate plans during these days of action and communicate any announcements and potential impacts on school procedures or on the routines of the school directly with families in those communities. If there are concerns about the direction that a local school division has taken, I encourage parents and caregivers and families to speak with the local school board trustee or the director of education, as they are the ones setting these plans in place. As we have communicated prior to the break, if government and school boards don't start taking negotiations seriously, our actions will continue to escalate. I want to share my thanks with parents and caregivers for their continued support and understanding. We recognize that these actions have an impact on you and your families, and more importantly, have an impact on your children. Teachers do not want to take any action that disrupts student learning or removes opportunities for students to participate in actions within the school community, but we cannot continue on our current course of action that the government has taken. You can stay up to date with any announcements on the STF website, and members of the public are encouraged to join a Zoom information session that I'll be hosting tonight. You can register through the STF website, and links to that registration can be found on our social media accounts. If you have concerns about the actions that we're taking or concerns about the state of public education and the lack of supports available in schools, I encourage you to contact your MLA, the Minister of Education, and the Premier of Saskatchewan, as well as your locally elected school board trustees. Urge them back to the table with a renewed mandate to negotiate so that we can ensure that students have the supports that they need and that they deserve in classrooms all across our province. So again, thank you for joining me here today. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. I see Alec.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I suppose you had mentioned the escalation. We've got now 4 out of 5 days this week that are going to have job action on them. It's a little difficult on my end to keep track of where everything is happening. Does that factor into, or is that a part of the strategy that the STF is deploying, essentially to have these sorts of targeted and specific strikes in certain places, but spread out across the province? Can you just tell me a little bit about the strategy that you guys are employing here?
Well, our strategy is intended to get government back to the table and school boards back to the table, ready to negotiate and address these issues. The issues that we're talking about with class size and class complexity aren't isolated to a single area in the province. They are in classrooms and in schools in every area across Saskatchewan, not just urban, not just rural, not just northern. It is in every single area in Saskatchewan. And the challenges that they face are unique. And that's why we need to have a Saskatchewan solution to these issues. But we cannot continue to ignore them. And so the actions that we have taken are intended to get government back to the table and get them ready to negotiate and ready to make a commitment to improvements in classrooms all across the province.
So we've got the final sitting of the session starting back up on Monday. I suppose, how do you see session returning impacting job action or impacting your ability to get back to the table with the GTBC with the renewed mandate?
Well, hopefully when we see session returning, we see a commitment from this government to address the needs of students and families across the province through public education. We have seen this government make other items a significant priority and address them very quickly. With less communication coming, we have had, like I said, 62,000 emails and phone calls from parents just through January and now into February. That is a significant amount of communication to say public education is a priority and they need to start addressing the challenges that students and teachers are facing in their classrooms. And so I hope that we start to see more communication and more of a focus on public education by our elected officials in government. And to me, it shouldn't impede anything that's happening in the negotiations process.
Yeah, that's all for me from right now. Thanks.
Thanks, Alec. Victoria?
Yeah, hi. Can you explain a little bit the job actions that are taking place between now and Wednesday? Because it's a lot and it's a bit, it's so much for parents to take in. A lot of parents do not really understand what's going on. Could you please explain what the job actions are, for the next 3 days?
Yeah, so we have included all of that information on our website and through our news releases. And so I would encourage parents to go to those sources in order to find out what the actions are in different areas of the province. But as I said, that communication should be happening from the school division to parents directly as well. And I know from my experience as a parent, I actually didn't get any communication from my local school division where my children attend until late Sunday night. And that's a concern to me because teachers are providing additional notice so that parents can be aware and can make alternate arrangements if necessary. But it is the school division's responsibility to get that information out to parents. And it should be happening in a timely manner. It shouldn't be waiting even over the weekend. They should be communicating that information out. So I would encourage parents to check our website if they're wanting more updated information, or like I said, contact their local school board and ask them for more up-to-date information to know how they're going to be impacted in that local area.
Now, how do you think we would continue to get, support from parents about, the strike action, because everything just is a bit confusing for them? How do you think support will continue with this for the strike action?
Definitely, we understand that these actions are creating an impact and creating challenges for families across the province. But I think at the core of it, parents continue to support teachers, and members of Saskatchewan continue to support teachers, because we are fighting for not just public education, we are fighting for better supports for every single child across our province. And as a parent, I want what is best for my kid. And that means supporting all of the other kids in the classroom and all of the other kids in the school. We want to make sure that they can thrive in their pre-K to 12 education. And that is the root of this issue. It shouldn't come down to these actions. It shouldn't have to take teachers taking job action at all. Government should be committing the funds necessary. They should be listening to the 62,000 emails, the 7,000 people that came out to rallies through the spring and the fall, and the continued phone calls and conversations that they're having in the public. Students don't have a vote in the election, but that shouldn't matter. When we're talking about public education, we should be making decisions that are in the best interest of kids, regardless of what political party is in charge. And government needs to start listening and needs to start recognizing that this is their responsibility. And I think that that's why, like I said, that's why parents are continuing to support, because it's a priority to them to ensure that in the long term, students are supported in their schools. Moira?
Thank you. We're hearing from some teachers that the strikes, the rotating actions are affecting their paychecks and their ability to put food on the family for their families and their children. I'm wondering if you can speak to the financial impact this is having on teachers, and do you have a ballpark for what it's costing them right now?
Well, it's difficult to determine what it's costing teachers, because teachers are paid on a scale based on their experience and their education, and depending on whether they've just been impacted by the 2 province-wide days or if they've had additional days of rotating strike. It's going to be different for different individuals across the province. But that said, it just goes to show how government has underfunded education, and the impact that even 1 or 2 days has on an individual's ability to maintain their quality of life. I mean, it shouldn't be that if you lose 1 paycheck, or not paycheck, but 1 day of pay or 2 days of pay, that you're questioning whether you can pay your mortgage or whether you can pay your grocery bill or your heating bill. This just goes to show the impact that teachers have experienced with their salaries not keeping pace with inflation. And so absolutely, compensation is part of the conversation that we're having. But it also goes to show the commitment that teachers have in taking these actions to ensuring that they can be successful in their work, and their students can be successful in their learning.
Thanks. And just one more, all of, as my colleague at Global said, there's a lot of confusion, and it's rotating across the province, different conditions in different school divisions. At what point is a full strike on the table to strangely maybe give people a bit more stability and predictability over where their kids and for teachers where their work is going to be at for a few weeks?
That's a good question. We're definitely looking at all options that are available to teachers and taking action to get government back to the table. I guess a better question would be, why is it taking this significant amount of action? I hope you're also asking the government of why are they not coming to the table ready to negotiate better supports for students so that students can have predictability and sustainability in their classrooms and know that they will have timely access to the supports that they need. We shouldn't be at this point. We have brought this up in negotiations over the last 2 rounds of our contract negotiations here in Saskatchewan. This has been created over a decade of budget increases that are below the rate of inflation and that don't adequately address our growing enrollment. I mean, we've seen since 2016 going from first in the country for per student spending down to 8th. We've seen 15,000 additional students come into our schools and only 10 full-time equivalent teachers added to schools in Saskatchewan. It is simply inadequate, and the fact that government continues to ignore their responsibility and continue to think that they can ignore this problem and make empty promises and kind of win budgets before elections is simply not enough. We need a meaningful commitment where they can be held accountable to ensuring that students are going to get the supports they need over a long period of time.
Thanks, that's it for me.
Thanks. Derek?
Hi there. So Moira asked one question that I had, which was on, whether or not a full strike is on the table, and I think you answered that very clearly there. I did want to ask because we've been seeing chatter on social media around our area in Prince Albert, where there are some people that are frustrated that students are missing school, that they're missing these hours of education, and they're wondering, is this job action helping them or hurting them? So how would you respond to criticism like that?
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm a parent too, and I am very concerned. And even teachers who aren't parents are concerned about the loss of instruction time and the impact that that is going to have on children across the province. And in addition to the lost instruction time, the lost opportunities as we have a withdrawal of extracurricular activities and those voluntary services that teachers provide. And it's unfortunate. No one wants to take these actions. No one wants to have negotiations come to this point. We came to the table in good faith for 10 days from May to October, and government did not move off their position on any items aside from one. They continue to refuse to acknowledge that these items can be negotiated. And I mean, over the longer period of time, yes, these actions have an impact, and they've, been an impact now for just over a month. They do create disruptions, and we recognize that. But the significant amount of disruptions that have been created by choices of this government in underfunding education cannot continue. I mean, we have had a generation of kids who have only seen a decline of supports year after year after year as they go through the public education system. And as a parent myself, that is what is more concerning, is what is the state of education going to look like in 5 years when my kids are in high school, or what is the education system going to look like in 10 years? My oldest daughter talks about wanting to be a teacher, and I think, my gosh, like, I know how much it has changed in my careers from when I started to now. I can't imagine if we do not change course, what it is going to look like in 10 years. And so yes, these actions have an impact, but government's actions are so much more detrimental to a generation of kids. And it shouldn't come to this point. Like I said, it should not take this amount of pressure for government to fulfill their responsibility of ensuring kids are getting the support that they need in our classes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Derek. Alec?
I guess when it comes to binding arbitration, I realize that it has to be, both parties that agree to it. But are you, the STF, the Teachers Bargaining Committee, open to binding arbitration?
Well, that would be a conversation we would have with our membership. But as I said, we are hoping, and I agree with the minister, the best agreements are made through negotiations. But the other side needs to engage in those conversations and have that back and forth. If they would be willing to look at that, like I said, we would have a conversation with our membership, and we would need to get direction from them on whether we would go, we would agree to binding arbitration as well, but we need to get to a solution. And I know I've said it a couple times today, but it shouldn't be this hard for government to make commitments. And we've heard the minister say that there will be a renewed investment in public education, and they acknowledge that class complexity is impacting students across the province and growing class sizes and the lack of supports that are available. They acknowledge all of these things, but they do not want to make a commitment where they can be held accountable and where they can't back out of it. And that is really frustrating. I mean, to me, that shows how little they have in terms of a long-term commitment, or how little of a long-term commitment they're truly wanting to make for kids in Saskatchewan.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so not seeing any other hands up or any other questions in the chat. Again, just want to thank everyone for joining us here today. And again, I heard lots of questions about concerns from parents. So want to reiterate that we have the parent information night that is occurring tonight on Zoom. And I would encourage all members of the public to join us for that, to hear a little bit more information of why we are taking the actions we're taking and why it is important for teachers to have these items addressed within our collective agreement process. And who this fight is really about. Like I said, this is about ensuring that kids today have the supports that they need in their classes, and they're able to thrive in their education, but also kids in years to come and for the next generation of students, and that new teachers can be successful in their classes and be able to support the kids across the province. And so again, thank you for joining us here, and thank you for continuing to share the messages and share the reality of the situation in education in Saskatchewan. Have a great rest of your day.